Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World, episode 142. I am your host, John Jordan, and joining me today we have Dan Lee, who is the Director of Business Development, at Nod Games. How's it going, Dan?
Thank you for the intro, John. I'm having a very good time right now. We just came off from one of the longer holidays in Korea, so it was a Korean
Okay.
Thanksgiving. So we had a full 6 day break, which was
Oh,
a
wow.
timely one because I was in Gamescom and then was in Singapore and then Tokyo Game Show, so it was just crazy lot of traveling. But now I'm back in Korea
Yeah.
and set my feet there and spent the
Okay.
past 6 days just gaming.
What else to do when you have 6 days off from your gaming company? More gaming, good. Okay, we're going to talk
Exactly.
sort of
Exactly.
widely about what's going on in Korea, and obviously what's going on at Nod Games. But first, I have actually had, I think it's probably get on for 2 years ago. We had Han on very in the very early days of when League of Kingdoms launched. So we'll sort of focus on that. I think it's a good sort of starting point, and that's obviously the product that you've been running for getting on for sort of 4 years now, I imagine. So it is a mobile browser-based mobile strategy sort of game where you sort of has some, I guess, typical sort of 4X type things where you're base building and building up armies and sort of going out onto the battlefield and sort of fighting monsters and all that sort of stuff. Interesting NFTs where you could own land, and there was sort of an idea that you could sort of earn things from them as well. And now we have NFT dragons. So that product's been sort of really well developed for the last sort of number of years. But you have still sort of a wider vision to sort of take that on. So can you talk a little bit about sort of what's been going on with League of Kingdoms and sort of the vision for the next sort of coming months and years?
So, John, you did a great job in giving a brief intro on what the game was. Let me just go a little more onto it. So it's a MMORTS game. So it's a massively multiplayer online real time strategy game. So that's a longer version, but we usually go by like a 4X game genre. So
Yeah.
it's similar to all the other 4X genre games that you've seen out there. Build your castle, build your own army, fight other people on your continent, and during continent versus continent modes, which is like basically like the server versus server kind of mode, you get allied with everyone inside your continent, and then you fight other continents. And if you come out victorious, you get some rewards for it. So the game concept is as simple as that. We've been trying to add a lot more Web3 features onto it.
Okay.
So we started as what nowadays people mostly call it a Web 2.5 approach. Have a game first
Yeah.
that's similar to what a Web 2 game would look like. And from there, we started, slowly integrating Web3 features like our token, native token, our NFTs. We started with a land NFT, but that was very small amount. That was to kind of announce that we were a Web3 game studio. And from there, we've been mostly developing the game itself as a playable, interesting, enjoyable game. And then from there, like 1.5 to 2 years into it, we launched our token, Loka.
Mm.
And then we added on, like resource NFTs and the one you mentioned, Dragon NFTs, last year. Yeah, like late last year. And then so what these NFTs do is that first of all, we try to put some kind of utility in our NFTs, right? So the land NFT is pretty self-explanatory, so I'm not going to go into that. The resource NFTs is a pretty interesting concept there because if you look at last year, our resource NFTs were the most frequently traded assets on Polygon. And we are going on and off that list as like the most traded or like the second most traded NFTs. So they're not expensive; they're like less than $1 almost, and it's for the ease of trading between users. So it's like a P2P trading. We're enabling that.
And
And
if I
the
remember
reason why
right,
we don't
Because if I remember right, I did do this when it was back on Ethereum, and basically you can take the resources, so it's lumber, gold, stone, the sort of typical things, and
Hmm.
basically you as a player bundle those into an NFT and set the price, isn't it? So it's
Hmm.
very player sort of player centric. So that's sort of a nice thing that instead
Hmm.
of sort of like a Web2 game, you'd be buying those resources in a bundle from the developer. In this case, it's literally buying from other players who have create these things. It's sort of very that bottom up sort of economy.
Yeah, so I mean, we are, sacrificing a bit of our in-app purchases for that because one
Mm.
of our packages do actually, in fact, we sell like resources,
Okay.
but it's so much cheaper to get the resources via P2P trading, and because our users know that, they go on and trade the resources on, marketplaces like OpenSea or like Tofu NFT mostly.
Okay.
So yes, like we are trying to do a lot of different experiments on what are some things that we can give back to the users. What are the things that as developers like we should have. So it's kind of like goes along well with like the philosophy of like decentralization and
Mm-hmm.
giving back the ownership. But I honestly think it's mostly that for mobile games, it's really hard to do a P2P trading, right? Like look at like other mobile games that you have. There's almost zero capability for a user to sell their asset to another person if the game developers do not allow it, and even if they do allow it, it's like within their platform, right? So we have to like hold control of it. Like the developers will be taking a fee if they are. Yeah. So it's a very complicated feature, but we think that if you use it the blockchain technology, it's going to be very easy for if like we just enable the ability for users to mint these resources into an NFT, and that's all we do.
Mm.
And then like users just like take it outside and put it on chain and then trade it and then bring it back to their games and then use it. So we think that it's one of the most like intuitive usages of NFTs. So yeah, that's one of the things that we tried, and I guess from our volume, the trade volume, it seems that our theory or hypothesis was proven somewhat correct
Mm-hmm.
because people are using that feature, and it's been a very integral part of our gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
So that was that, and then when we announced our Drago NFTs, like that's the Dragon NFTs, we try to give a lot of buffs for the users who own these dragons, and we've been trying to develop a mode that only these dragon holders can enter, and can get some other like extra value from the game when they're using these dragons. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean that's been what we have been doing,
Mm-hmm.
and if I can go just a little bit into like what we look for in the future
Yeah,
is that
sure.
we're trying to release a yeah, okay, go on, John.
No, I was just going to say one thing that I thought was interesting is you've been sort of building through very different markets. So obviously, when the game I think came out in 2021, that was a very sort of quiet time, and then you've been in 2022 where everything's been sort of through the roof, the peak market, and now you're sort of still building in this sort of very much a bear market. How have you found that? Obviously, I imagine you're much more popular in sort of late 2021, early 2022 than sort of you are now. I mean,
Mhm.
has that sort of affected the way you've looked at the product and the stuff you've built out, or you sort of tried as much as possible just to sort of follow where you think you should be going, no matter really what's going on in the market?
Yeah. So I mean, let me just like quickly correct you there,
Yeah,
John.
go for it.
So our game actually came out in 2018. So
Yeah, there we go.
it's been even a quieter market when we started
Yeah,
building.
yeah.
So when nobody really cared about games at all in Web3, they thought it was all about DeFi and infrastructure, and which seems to be the case right now, right? So it feels like we started at a place, and there was like the 2020 and 2021 when games suddenly became the hottest topic in Web3, and then like everything crashed, and then now we're back at the place of where we started at, and I feel like because we came in before like a lot of other gaming products were in, and like almost at the same time as Axie Infinity, like we were building side by side with them. So back then we had this idea, and we believed that we're not finance guys, or we're not like like layer one product guys. We're just gamers, right? So gaming builders, right? So we found out that there was a few features or aspects where we can use the blockchain technology to augment the experience of gaming, and that's why we came into the scene and we started building, and that's why we're continuously building in this market. And we believe that at one point, I'm not the person to come and ask if like Web3 industry in general as a whole will become great again. Like, I'm not the guy to answer that, but at least like in gaming, I feel like there is a way to definitely use these blockchain technology to kind of like enhance the experience of gaming. So we're still building even during this market situation. And I feel like there's a lot more people who also empathize in what we think, because as I feel like that's some topic to discuss later. But a lot of other gaming studios in Korea are also very interested in building a Web3 product. So yeah, I mean that's my approach to this whole like Web3 thing. And I think and to me, like, forgive me if you were expecting something like decentralization or like ownership to the users, but I think it's more than that. It's less about those like philosophical things about blockchain, but it's more about what blockchain technology really enables users to do within these gaming environment. So yes, of course, decentralization and like ownership is a part, but I feel like there are more practical usages of blockchain technology in gaming, at least, and that's why we're still in here. That's why we see a lot more game developers in the scene in Korea.
Yeah, cool. And sort of following on from that, you so one of the things that's sort of often mentioned in blockchain is interoperability, and we haven't seen an enormous amount of that, I suppose, because it's really difficult to do. But you're sort of it's something that you're looking to sort of push ahead on in terms of League of Kingdoms. So can you talk a little bit about sort of how you're seeing that as I mean, it is an expansion of the game, but it's sort of another game as well.
So yeah, I mean, I think interoperability is a very important piece. It's more of a practical usage that I just mentioned. It's for you to bring out some of the items and then be able to use it in some other game, right? The real roadblock to that in reality is that if you want to, let's say, use an item that you farmed at PUBG and then want to use it in Fortnite, for that to be happening, you should see like Epic Games and Krafton both working on some kind of partnership and allowing these items to go to each other's, right? So that's the realistic roadblock. So for people to imagine something like Ready Player One to come to life, I feel like that's a little more further down the road. I feel like the realistic solution for that would be this one gaming company somewhere in the world just pops up and literally comes up with this game, as you've seen in Ready Player One, where everybody in the whole world plays it, and then they're just like using it. That's metaverse to me, and that's like what this like future looks like. But for now, I feel like interoperability is a little more confined within walls of each companies, and I don't think that's a bad thing. It's like we got to try out whether this really works or not before we can move on to the next stage, right? So I think that's what we're really trying to do here. We're trying to develop a new game that's a completely different genre from our Forex League of Kingdoms, but still succeeding much of the look and feels of the game itself, and trying to basically migrate most of the NFTs and all of our native tokens over to the next game, so that it's more of a proof of concept, and at the same time, we're also trying to make a fun game, right? We can't just tell our users to sacrifice enjoyment and fun just because of this high value of testing out whether this interoperability really works or not. So we're trying to right now to balance out whether this goes here, that goes there. So it's going to take a few while, but we think that sometime next year, earlier than later,
Okay.
next year we're gonna come up with a new genre game that really succeeds like the whole like League of Kingdoms IP.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we're gonna use every single NFTs that we've used, but we're definitely gonna uh, allow the use of Drago NFTs, which were a
Mm.
little more expensive than our resource NFTs.
Yeah.
So we're not trying to we're not trying to rug pull anybody. We're trying to just like see if like this fun and asset ownership and all that can continue on to our next title. And yeah, we're trying to do that. So that's to come up next year. Um, Let me just give you a little sneak peek on what the game would look like. So it's a game. It's a idle RPG dungeon crawler style game.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna have heroes, and we're gonna have units. We're gonna fight. Or it's gonna be mostly PVE,
Yeah.
but we're trying to like look for more PvP, like MMO, utilities within that game. So that's what we're building right now. That doesn't mean that we've completely abandoned like League of Kingdoms. We're also working on League of Kingdoms to add some more of the mini games.
Okay.
So it's going to be like games within games, but not like some bullshit games that nobody's going to really enjoy playing. Right? I think that's one of the mistakes that a lot of the game makers make when they add in like mini games. I mean, yes, it's good that there are other modes for users to enjoy, but once it becomes like not fun and like very rudimentary, like nobody's gonna play it, and it just wasted a lot of development effort. So we're still trying to find some of the mini games that actually work really well with the forex genre itself. Uh, so yeah, we're working on those two things. So like for League of Kingdoms, we're trying to add additional modes. For the next game, we are trying to yeah succeed like the look and feel of League of Kingdoms and use the NFTs. Yeah, that's what we're doing for now.
And in terms of the sort of dungeon crawler game, how would you present that? Would you present that as you won't be accessing that within League of Kingdoms? That would be like a separate game with its own separate app or whatever.
Yeah, so I think we are trying to make it a separate
Yeah.
game because if it becomes another mini game or a
Yeah.
mode under League of Kingdoms, it kind of beats the purpose of whole interoperability and the completely different genre that we're trying to launch. So it is going to be a different type of game. We're hoping that it's going to be similar to what League of Kingdoms was, and hopefully it's going to be fine. We're not. I think that we're also gonna try the Web 2.5 approach for this one as well.
Yeah.
Uh, that meaning the Web 3 users and the users coming from League of Kingdoms, they will definitely be rewarded for their loyalty and like their continued support for the game. But to attract newer gamers, we can't kind of like make the OB users too OP.
Yeah.
Like they need their proof or reward for them playing our game for a long time. But if the game starts being broken, even the OB users will not be able to enjoy the game because there's going to be no newer people coming in, right? So we're trying to really find that meticulous balance, which is I think the hardest of all game making. But yeah, we're really trying hard to take care of that.
Cool. Good. Um, and so that's sort of the games you're making as Nod Games as a game developer, but you're also sort of branching out and looking at sort of publishing. So I guess we are sort of seeing more sort of generally. I don't think there's any sort of strong companies yet who are sort of Web3 publishers, although there's sort of plenty who have sort of setting themselves up because obviously in the gaming world, publishers are
Mhm.
is a well a well understood business model where you're basically taking a lot of the sort of non-development expertise in terms of distribution and marketing and probably some finance stuff in there and
Mhm.
sort of building a sort of more portfolio approach of how you publish. As I said, we've not seen that in
Mhm.
Web3 yet. Web3, I think blockchain has some interesting sort of technologies that could help publishing, I think. But what can you tell us about a move into publishing? Because publishing clearly is different some different skills from developing, and how are you sort of approaching that?
So, I mean, I think, John, you got the gist of what publishing business pretty much looks like. I think, right now, there are a lot of players in this field trying two approaches. I think one is the usual Web2 publishing approach where, you contact the studios, you find ways to finance them and try to help them out with their user acquisition. So basically the distribution part and do a rev share in that sense. The second part is, I would say it's less the traditional publishing route, but it's more of a Steam slash like Epic Game Stores kind of route where you have a platform, you try to onboard all these games, and then just to kind of like take care of the user distribution in that sense, and take more of the share because you are sharing your platform. So those are the two types of approaches that I've seen so far in Web3. I don't think anyone is coming out as a dominant player yet. I think also because the industry is so young and it's in a nascent stage. So if you consider that, I think we are taking a more the former approach, where it's similar to what Web2 publishing looks like. We try to help them out with their initial capital injection and like financing them, and helping them out with user acquisition. But we're trying to do this in a more Web3 way than Web2. So a lot of the reasons why a smaller gaming studio would want to come into Web3 is because of the whole the money issue, right? The funding issue for especially like user acquisition. Like nowadays, it takes more money to do distribution than to actually develop a game. So it's crazy right now. Like it's more money aftermath than actual developing. So that's why a lot of the gaming studios come to publishers in the first place. But now a lot of the gaming studios are coming into Web3 because they feel like it's lesser cost in user acquisition, and gives you a more I would say efficient approach for fundraising part. This is what I've been hearing when I was at Gamescom Cologne earlier this year. And I mean, I don't think this is probably the right reason for gaming studios to come into Web three, because it just means that it's a repetition of a lot of moral hazard issues that we've seen so far, like in the industry. But I mean, I think it's a start. I think it's a start. We've been talking with a few of these gaming studios as well, trying to see, or trying to at least persuade them that money cannot be the only reason why you're coming into Web3, because we've seen so many players come in like that and then just exit quietly and like damaging the industry as a whole. So we'll see like how that conversation turns out. But for now, we're mainly focusing on gaming studios in Korea. So interesting thing about Korea is that if you make a list of gaming studios that make around over like $500 million revenue per year, there's around like 30 to 40 gaming studios, and every single gaming studio in that list has their own Web3 development team, which was really surprising to me. And this is one of the reasons why we're starting this game publishing business. Was last year summer, that was during, it was after like the first like crisis that we saw last year, but still a lot more people were lingering in the scene, right? So that's when a lot of the gaming studios actually approached us asking if we could help them, or we could become their bridge between Web 2 and Web 3 world. I think they like the idea that we've been around for a very long time, and we didn't leave at the peak, and we're still here. And even after like the first market crash, we were still building, and like we were sustaining our numbers, our metrics, like our DAUs and our MAUs and our ARPUs and all these like important metrics. So that's why they came to us and asked if we could become their advisors or publishers. So that's what we're doing. And in the Korean market, I think the biggest factor driving these gaming studios to go into Web3 is because they want a more global exposure. So, I mean, if you look at if you go back to the fact that I just stated, saying that there are like 30 plus gaming studios that are making 500 million plus dollars every year, that's a lot of gaming studios, right? But out of them, only a couple would ring a bell for people outside of Korea.
Mm.
That is because we've been mostly focusing on the local market, and even if we do expand, it's more of the Asian region rather than the West. And I mean, there are definitely amazing game studios who did make a presence in the West, like NCSoft, Nexon, Netmarble, and like Krafton, and even Smilegate. But they feel like building an IP, a global IP, is still a very hard job, and they feel like if you do it the right way in Web3, it might be one of the secret sauces for these gaming studios to create more global IPs. So a lot of those are approaching us, and what's great about this is that it really decreases the amount of funds that we need to put in initially, because all of these gaming studios have a lot of money right up front. So they more or less want guiding hand to point us to the directions like where we want to go, and like utilize our network in the in the Web3 world, like which layer ones we have to go, which partners we have to work with, which user pools we have to utilize. So that's something it's making us a lot easier to work in. So that's what's been happening. So our first deal is with a company called NHN.
Mm-hmm.
It's a powerhouse for social casino and web board games in Korea. They used to be under the name called Han Game. Han Game. They had like their poker series and other these like social casino slash like web board games related IPs, and now they're trying to come into Web3, because I feel like personally, like these types of games and like Web3 are very intuitively making sense, because like of all the reasons. I don't want to go into too much of a detail, because it might be a little risky as well. But I still think that they have a good run, and they are trying all the right things to operate in this field. So yeah, NHN is the first one that we've partnered with. The next one is called Reality Magic. It's a smaller gaming studio, but they've been a pretty sustainable like powerhouse in AR VR games and like traditional Web2 games. So those two are our first partners, and we are talking with a few others to see if there is room for one or two more gaming studios that we can onboard before this year, before the end of this year, because this year we kind of like focused on showing that we exist and we are now doing this kind of business. And next year we're trying to focus completely on the publishing efforts instead of the sales
Yeah.
efforts. So that's what's been going on for our publishing side. And I think right now the interest in the Korean market in Web3 gaming is very high. So I don't think that we're going to have a problem finding the right gaming studios. And it's just very interesting how most of these gaming studios were not talking about money or revenues up front as well, because they think of this as like an investment. They think of this as an opportunity to learn something that's not been there before. And if you look at the Korean industry landscape everywhere else, like the service or like the infrastructure or like the comms especially, Korea is very fast to adapt or adopt even new things. So I think it's one of those similar things like happening in Korea. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was interesting. I had Q Lee from come to us on the podcast probably about 4 issues ago, and I think it was sort of interesting. He was saying that Korean companies generally have built their sort of success on sort of these sort of fairly large MMORPGs, traditionally PC, and then they've sort of moved it onto mobile. But Korean companies generally are really good at sort of back end server technology, and in a broader sense, if you look at blockchain, I mean, if you sort of strip away a lot of the sort of mythology of blockchains are the famous slow databases. So in a sense, sort of blockchain, the basic nature of how these things work is actually fits very well into sort of how Korean games have been made. So from that point of view, it's sort of interesting, and I guess that's maybe why Korean companies have sort of had a understanding of how the stuff works. Of course, the difficulty of actually building games that make this work and the sort of the financialization of it and all that sort of stuff is just sort of much harder for everyone. I mean, no one's really solved that problem at the moment. So, but it is interesting, as you say, that pretty much every, well, you would know more than me, but I've not heard of sort of any of the big global Korean games companies who aren't really looking at blockchain. And certainly since they've announced stuff over the last sort of 18 months, none of them have said, like some Western companies, oh no, so we're not doing this anymore. Sort of EA famously was talking about NFTs,
Oh yeah, yeah.
then didn't at all. But the Korean companies just thought, like, it's going to take longer than we thought. It's not an easy thing. It's a 5-year project. We're gonna take those steps and build things out, and we'll sort of do that learning, which is obviously the best way to do it. But
Yeah, no, I think that's what's making me a little more optimistic about gaming in blockchain space, because you know, I mean, I wouldn't blame these like larger gaming studios if they just like one day just decided to back out, because they're a publicly traded company in Korea, and they have these risks with like regulations and policymakers and even like law enforcers, right? So like if they think that they are in here for a short term
yeah,
and trying to do some shady stuff, like they would, the first thing they would do is pull their feet out, right? But none of them are really pulling their feet out. They're trying to, I mean, yes, like their launch is being postponed, but understandably, because of the market situations and complications like in Korean regulatory landscape. But they are still very enthusiastic about it, and I think that's what's making this a little more promising. Maybe a few years down, uh, maybe it's not like the market peak, but still there are going to be products that are continuously launching. And as it's not, maybe not their first trial, but if they keep on continuously coming in and like challenging the doors with their products, I feel like at one point one's going to at least like make it. And when that happens, I feel like more would follow through, and hopefully that would create a room for mass adoption that we all talk about in Web3.
mm.
Yeah.
And I think as well, there's sort of games, there's big MMORPGs where really you have to throw a lot of time at them, and you're basically grinding out for some very very rare
Yeah.
sort of items, and that actually sort of plays into blockchain as well, where maybe we got a bit carried away with sort of everyone gets an NFT and they're all going to be worth $1,000. That's not sustainable. Whereas if you're going to have if you have to play for 50 hours, 100 hours, and you get something that is then not many people in the game have, then that sort of makes more sense for that to be an NFT rather than everything in the game to be an NFT, which clearly for all kind of reasons doesn't make sense. So
Yeah. So John, I think you pointed. Yeah, John, I think you really pointed out a very important aspect of NFTs and gaming. So I think from here and moving on, I feel like there's going to be two types of NFTs. Like NFTs, like are resources, or are Dragos that is more available for people. And even with our Dragos, like if you upgrade them to a certain point, it's going to be more rare. So it's going to be a rare piece, which makes it more expensive. And I think that's a very simple fact that a lot of people kind of forget about when they're coming into Web3 and gaming. Like if everybody can have it, and if this is like a widespread thing, and people can just like mint it into NFT, there's no way it's going to be expensive. And we do think that, at least for MMORPG, what Korea is really strong at, a lot of people come in for that play to earn aspect that's been there even before Web3. I think playing and earning is a very big, has been a very big aspect of gaming even before the whole like P2E concept was conceived during the wake of Axie Infinity. It was always there. People farmed, and if they have like rare items, and if it's like if people want it, if there's high demand for it, people will go around and sell it, right? So I think so the first type, it would be one of the more utility based, non-rare, cheaper but P2P allowing NFTs, and the other one is going to be more expensive items. And I think
Mm.
for games, a lot of people have high standards for it, but I feel like it's really similar to TikTok and YouTube. YouTube and TikTok, they do rev shares, right? But they don't do it to every single one within the ecosystem. They do it to the highest value adding creators, and nobody's really anal about it because they understand that these creators come in and bring value, and that's why they come back to the platform to watch the game. So I think it's a little different in gaming, but still, like, those people who are farming
Mm.
um, these games, like no, these items would be probably the more value creating, like adding value type of gamers, like in the ecosystem. I think I want to like move a little bit further on to looking at Fortnite. Like I think Fortnite has a really great UGC slash rev share model with like their top creators, and I think this is very similar to what a lot of the gaming studios are looking at when they look at decentralization and revenue share with their
Mm.
value creators. I don't think that this should be something that is overlooked. But if you look at Fortnite, why they can do it, why they can share 40% of their revenue with the value creators without any complications, without Web3 technology right now, is because they also own a payment gateway. So having a PG means that they are licensed, first of all, so they're shielded from a lot of the regulatory aspects. And number two, they have access to putting money directly into their creators' pockets or wallets, right? So that is a great enabler and something that blocks up, it builds a barrier for a lot of other players to come in and enter into this field because of the feasibility of this idea, right? But I think once you go into Web3 and you start distributing value through maybe tokens or NFTs, I think this allows for more players to come in and think that take this like UGC method.
Mm.
Like I'm an avid gaming player. I've or like I've bought like Starfield when it was first even available. I've been playing Cyberpunk for a long time. I took my rest, but recently they did a new update with the DLC. I came back, and the commonality of these Starfield and Cyberpunk and many other games, especially by CDPR and like Bethesda, is that these games really heavily leverage on the modders, right? People come in and they, basically volunteer to give out their talent to really enable users to augment their experience in playing gaming, right? So it's very interesting because if you left all of these like mods to the game developers, it would take
Mm.
ages. And because not because they're incapable, I feel like these game developers at CDPR and Bethesda are like the most capable people like out there, but they have to focus on certain things, and the numbers are limited. But if you look at these modders, there's just like so many modders, like I don't even know where they're coming from. Like they're genius like coders that somehow learn like computer coding, and then they're adding like these contents. I'm a journalism major, so I know none of that. So I just like look in awe at these people, like how are they doing it? But the thing is right now is that it's mostly leveraging on people's goodwill and the people's love for the game. And
Mm.
I think Fortnite has come in and changed a lot of that. I think YouTube and TikTok are showing that there is a path where the platform and these users and like value added creators can also go hand in hand by sharing revenue. And I think this will bring a lot more interesting games and a lot more diversity into what are possible in games. And I think that's a good way to metaverse. And if this is all something that can be done through blockchain technology, I feel like that is a new a game changer, basically, no
Mm.
pun intended, like a game changer for the gaming industry. So yeah, so I mean, I look at that as one of the possibilities where you can do a lot of rev share with top value adding creators. So one is, as you said, like these rare game items, and two is a way to kind of reward these value adding creators. I mean, right now there isn't really much I can do for people on Nexus Mod. I do I subscribe to it. That's the most I can do. And like for one of the kick-ass mods, I do donate to them directly. But if there's a systematic way for games to kind of like share the revenue, I mean, if you talk about like this whole game share with like value adders initially, it might not make sense. It might want to make game studios not willing to open up their revenue with the value creators. But I think if you look at the long term, if these users can bring in more users and more revenue and can actually grow the size of the pie, I feel like game studios will not uh, be too worried about sharing their tapping into their revenues and giving it away to the value creators, because it's a win-win scenario.
Yeah.
A
No,
bigger pie, lesser percentage, but still more in actual absolute value. I think that's the way to go.
well, I think even coming back to what you guys are doing with League of Kingdoms, I mean that would be a very sort of minor sort of version of that sort of wider vision that you were saying. But that's that even as a player, I think you end up with a different attitude of buying things that have been curated or created by other players. That's a different sort of mindset to buying them from a developer, and maybe you kind of feel. And I mean, obviously, it's always dangerous to take your own personal views and display them and sort of reflect them across a large community. But I generally feel that when you get into sort of creator communities, there's a sort of it's sort of a different mindset about how you buy stuff and how you interact with that compared to a sort of a centralized developer. And I think clearly what we hope is over the coming years, blockchain is going to sort of refocus that and obviously allow for a much more sort of holistic way of sort of sharing the revenue that is being created by the sort of community, just by in some cases playing the game. Cool. Well, thank you very much, Dan, for your time and telling us what's going on with League of Kingdoms. I'm now be looking out for a Drago and seeing seeing how what that adds. So yeah, I look forward to that. And thanks for telling us about what's going on in Korea, which I still think is by far and away actually at the moment the most interesting sort of place in terms of how blockchain games are being thought about and developed. But we shall keep our eye on that. So thanks for your time.
I mean, thank you for having me, John. It was a great opportunity for me to kind of like discuss these things that were all in my head, but I wanted to like really unleash this into the public, but there was no way. And like now you've provided me the medium to kind of do that. So thank you very much for like having me. I'll be always happy to come back on like whenever there's some like issues or something you want to talk about. It's been a pleasure. I actually enjoyed this a lot. So thank you so much, John.
Good. Yeah, we'll have to see at the some point next year when your new game goes live, and we can have a delve into that. That'll be a good opportunity. And a thank you to you for watching, listening to the podcast, however you are consuming it. Every episode, we are talking to people who are building out this fascinating new way to make games, play games, interact with gamers. I personally find it incredibly interesting. Hope you do too. Come back next time, see what's going on. See you. Bye.
Right. See you. Bye-bye.